Hmm. Hi. Hmm. Huh? Those things? Hello. Oh, yeah. I feel like someone has used it once this year, and it was like the other day.
This show is really good.
I really want to watch it.
It's good.
How many seasons does it have? Is it just two? Okay.
Season 1 is different than season 2, though.
Okay, it's like an
Season 2 is
anthology kind of.
Yeah. That's
Okay.
why there's 20 episodes, I think, in season 1, 20 in season 2.
Gotcha.
Season 2 is like about Japanese implement camp. And yeah, that
Sounds
one looks,
heavy.
Yeah, that one looks more scary than season
Yeah.
1. Yeah.
And the first one's like about a ship and
Yeah.
like, okay.
An expedition. It's actually based on a real expedition that did not end well.
Oh no. Well, I'm sure it makes for good TV, even if it didn't make for a good expedition. Yes, ma'am.
Two questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, you have any good Netflix suggestions that you watch?
Any good Netflix suggestions? Movies or shows?
It doesn't matter. Like, I'm bored.
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, it's kind of like Love is Blind, but not just love related.
Yeah,
Like-
and they're all kind of like win the money, so they're all like backstab people and everything.
Ozark is really good. It's such a good show. It's heavy. It's about like a guy, like a family man who gets mixed up in a drug cartel, but like it's so good and wild.
And the second question is, do you have to pick between Applebee's or Chili's?
Applebee's or Chili's?
That's like death and death.
I know. My first thought was Chili's because I do like their crispy chicken crispers, but Applebee's has that 2 for $20. I think I might go for Applebee's. What would you go for?
I don't know.
That's tough.
So I was trying to pick my mom up from our state,
Mm-hmm.
picking between one two.
Yeah.
Hey, what you think? Applebee's, but I'm like, ah.
Yeah, I like both of them. Hi.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Hey.
that.
I'm looking at someone's iSet. That's after I was trying to do something else.
I watched
What's up, Jenny?
Yeah, I feel like
her hair. She was figuring her hair out and she didn't finish it, so she just stayed.
who? Oh.
How do you do it?
Tell you all. Last night, I came from work. She already ate dinner, right? So I brought me a random hot sausage. I put it in the refrigerator. I want to check. Only one in there. I'm like, who's gonna take it? She's like, I was so mad. I need to talk to her about that. Home training watch.
That's what I talk about all the time. We don't have home training.
She don't know.
That's the thing. I can't.
What?
It's like, I had lemonade. It's like, oh, I'm gonna get some lemonade. They drunk it all. Like, this much left.
Some lemonade.
Yeah, but it's hot. It's not even refreshing.
Make real lemonade. It's like, make
I drank it, but that's
fresh lemonade.
A lot of people die, but no one else says doing that. I've said that. But we did like 3 or 4 deaths already. Really good.
Maybe I'll add that to my summer list. Okay. That haven't logged in our training. Uh-huh.
Yeah, what's your name? What's your name? Jensen?
Geeson.
Huh?
Geeson. Geesin.
So G, what is it?
Geesin. Geeson.
You came from where you say, right?
What is this?
Jensen, whatever your name is.
You guys, they'll have Sean Little Jackson.
Oh, I love that.
I probably don't understand. I think
I always watch with subtitles anyway,
yeah.
because sometimes there's too much going on, or I'm eating and I can't hear. This is Chip's fault, by the way. This is, yeah, and it's Chip's and my fault, because he was picking at it one day and he was like, "Can I peel off this whole section?" And I said yes, but then it really bothered me that we have this white section now.
You just put like a sleeve.
Maybe so, like cover it up somehow, put something pretty there. I can't even see it now.
What white spot? Exactly.
There is no white spot. All right, Alyssa's here, James is here, Jenny's here, LeBron is here, Cece's here, Kate is here, Zane is not yet here, and Randall is here. Okay, Zane's our only one. I was gonna mention a couple of you guys, I know you were working on the vocabulary quiz the other day, but I did not get a quiz from you. Let me actually look at the grade book and let you know whose I have. We're not going to work on them today, but we'll work on them tomorrow if you are someone who I did not get one from. We are in Q4. I have one from Alyssa, James, Jenny, LeBron, and Zane. So I don't have one from Cece, Cade, or Randall. And I know that y'all were working on them, but we'll sort that out tomorrow. I think tomorrow I'll give you guys, like once everybody's in, I'll give you guys this project we're gonna start working on. And then I'll just keep those of you who have not finished your quiz yet and let you finish it and submit it.
It's 11 o'clock.
Thank you. I think you told me this, like one's heavier.
Whichever one is
Yeah,
facing up, if you flip it when it's in the air.
that's wild. I'll get on to, we'll start reading in just a minute, but speaking of shows we should watch, this is actually a horrible show, but it's one of those like guilty pleasure reality shows. Are You the One? Which is an MTV show, and it's on Paramount Plus and on Hulu. And it is so stupid, but I can't stop watching it. It's like 10 guys, 10 girls in a house together, and they've like done all these compatibility tests, and somebody is their perfect match, but they don't know who it is. So they have to figure out who and like pair up and see how many, and like at the end of every episode, they pair up and they tell them how many pairs they have right, but not who the right pairs are. So it's like, it's strategy and it's like trying to find your perfect person.
You know what we should watch though?
It's frustrating. What should we watch?
In all honesty, because we're old enough to handle it, I believe in us. Bad Girls Club and Jersey Shore. Now, hear me out. They both teach valuable lessons in life.
I've never
How to be a douchebag or how to pull a lot of spray tan?
How to know you got the right one in the streets, LeBron. That's what both of them teach us. That's how you know. That is street smart TV show. Those shows teach you if you got the right one. And I'm glad. I think we should watch season 6 of Bad Girls Club and season 2 of Jersey Shore, because there is no way.
I'd rather watch two politicians have an argument than rather watch that.
I think we should watch those shows, Miss McClellan. I think they'd be very useful in life.
What? Oh, I've never seen it.
I mean, you should watch it.
Okay.
You have visual time.
Okay.
Another show I started watching quite early, but you should watch. It's called You.
Oh, I love that show.
I was like, I did not finish season 2 because I got pretty
It's creepy. I like even the very first episode. I'm like, "Oh, what's that?" When he's like watching her. Ugh.
He tells everyone.
It's so complicated because like you're kind of rooting for him sometimes, but then you're like, he's literally a murderer.
Yeah, you're inside his head.
Yeah.
It's like, it makes sense. But then you're like,
It
wait,
makes
wait,
sense.
That's whoa.
I know.
But this is pretty good.
Okay. Isn't Idris Elba in that? Idris Elba, the actor, isn't he in this?
Idris Elba? I love him so much. He was voted sexiest man of 2019.
And I I think that's good voting.
Yeah. And then Blake Shelton was voted sexiest man in 2018, but we're not going to talk about that. Blake Shelton.
Oh, that's so stupid.
I know. You would really like Lock and Key.
Lock and Key. I've never heard of it. What's that on?
It's on Netflix. It's about this family who moved into the mom's dad or the mom's dead husband. It's her dead husband. And they move into his old house in his old town, right? And this house has like a bunch of keys that open like random things. Like it depends on what kind of key you get. And then there's like a lady in a well. It's just ridiculous. I think you would really enjoy that show. It has a little boy who played Georgie in it as one of the kids. Yeah. This show's so good, Alyssa. Oh my God, so good.
I love that kid. I actually think he's cute. I almost never think kids are cute, but he's really cute. Yeah.
He's a sweetie.
Like Francis's youngest sibling a lot.
He does. Yeah.
Jude Proliger. The reason I was talking about Are You the One is because James brought up a coin toss and how it's not actually 50-50. And they like the last season I watched, season 3, was like they did not know until the last episode. They had like one couple that they knew was their match and everyone else they didn't. And so they like sat down and figured out like who they'd sat with on all the previous weeks and everything. And they figured out 2 configurations that could possibly work, but they didn't know which one it was. So they were like, let's flip a coin. And like, if they get 10 out of 10, they win $1 million. And so they were
like everybody in the house or just the couple?
I think they split it amongst them. And like the couple doesn't like, just because they figured out who their perfect match was, they like, that doesn't really give them an advantage except for narrowing the field. Like,
and you said this is called Are You the One?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it's like I can't stop watching it. Like it's one of those that like you blow through all 10 episodes really fast because you just have to.
We should watch 90 Day Fiance.
Oh my goodness. I think I would like The Circle. I've heard good things.
The Circle is so stupid. I've watched it. Yeah, it's not good. To me anyway.
Yeah.
But then again, I watch Bad Girls Club and Jersey Shore, so
Closest sport. It's just like it keeps you going. Yeah, because it always leaves you on a cliffhanger. You're like, I don't know what happened. I love it and I hate it because I have to keep going.
Wife Swap and Celebrity Wife Swap.
Gosh, Wife Swap.
And the name, what's her name? Her name is Abigail.
What? Oh my God. Okay. Sorry. I'm trying to deal with this freaking Trident thing. What in the world? Okay. There's this one woman from Trident who always signs emails respectfully, Deb. And something about that I feel like is not respectful. Like, I feel like she's scolding me and then being like, respectfully, you idiot, Deb. I just don't like that. Yeah. I don't like her signing off every email that way. That bothers me. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, if you meant it to be respectful, you should not have to add respectful. You're exactly right.
I don't really have like a sign off. You know, some people are like yours truly or sincerely or whatever. I don't really have one. I'm usually just like, thanks, Grace McClellan.
It's always weird to come up with one.
I know. Sincerely, but respectfully, I don't like that.
Hold on, I'm gonna find this show for you because I really enjoy it. It's about the British lady who does the babysitting, and she watches the people and see how they treat their kids terribly, and then she changes how they do their job as a parent.
Oh, what is that called? I know what you're talking about.
I get notifications for it every single day, and I do not remember.
Is it like Super Nanny or something?
Yes, Super Nanny.
Just
Oh, I love that show. I think
I don't think I've ever actually watched it, but she's kind of scary.
Yeah, her name is Joe. Yes, Joe Frost. Super
Okay.
Nanny.
Super Nanny. I got a lot of TV to catch up on this summer. I got to watch the most recent season of Grey's Anatomy. I know you've been a Grey's Anatomy person. I think there's only like 2 or 3 episodes left of the season, so I'm gonna wait and just watch the whole season. Oof. Okay, so today is Tuesday, so we're gonna start reading chapter 3 today. This is where things really start to pick up. The thing that Gatsby is known for, and the thing that people kind of think of when they think of the Great Gatsby, is these huge lavish parties that Gatsby throws. And this whole chapter is basically talking about the parties. So where we left off, Nick, our narrator, had gone to hang out with Tom and his mistress Myrtle at this apartment that they have together in New York. And we already knew Tom was like kind of horrible. The first time we met him, he was talking about that book he read about how white people need to keep down the other races so they don't overtake them. He had hurt Daisy's finger. We don't really know what happened there, but she was like, that's what I get for marrying a great hulking brute of a man. And then in the scene where he's with his girlfriend in New York, they're fighting and he's like, don't let me hear my wife's name come out of your mouth. And she's like, I'll say anybody's name I want to say, Daisy, Daisy, Daisy. And he pops her and breaks her nose. He's awful.
Okay, Miss McClellan, I'm gonna tell you somebody who used to get popped. That's not a pop. He hit her. He abused her. He hit her. Pop is something that's gonna sting for just a little minute. Punched her in her face. I don't. That was abuse.
I think it said open hand. Hang on, I'm just gonna look back for a second. Yeah, Tom making a short deft movement. Tom Buchanan broke her nose with his open hand, and they're all like trying to clean her up and everything, but then she's like kind of fine. And then Nick leaves and is like having drunken conversation with that photographer man. So it's so like climactic but anticlimactic. Like it is climactic, but then they just don't make a big deal of it. They're like, oh yeah, Tom broke her freaking nose, like she's just bleeding everywhere, whatever. And like I like to think I would never be anybody's mistress in the first place, but if I were and that guy broke my nose, I'd be like, number one, never speak to me again. Number two, I'm telling your wife, like 100%. I mean, it's a secret. And like, so Daisy knows that Tom is having an affair. He's not very discreet about it. Like Myrtle calls during dinner and stuff, but Daisy doesn't really know anything about her. She just knows that Tom is having an affair. It's probably not the first affair he's had, because when she's telling Nick about when she had her baby, who we don't even know the baby's name at this point, she's like, I was alone in the hospital. God knows where Tom was. So like, while she was having a baby, he's probably like off with some other woman. He's just not a good dude. He's too volatile, too violent, too racist, too sexist, too hung up on himself. He's just not got a lot going for him. So we're going to start reading chapter 3 today. If we don't get through it, I will make sure that you have a way to listen to it, but you'll have to make sure you finish reading it. But this is a lovely, fun chapter. Anybody want to read? All right, I will read. I will probably have to take lots of pauses for water. I'm just like so thirsty today. There was music from my neighbor's house through the summer nights. In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. Beautiful. At high tide in the afternoon, I watched his guests diving from the tower of his raft or taking the sun on the hot sand of his beach while his 2 motorboats slit the waters of the Sound, drawing aquaplanes over cataracts of foam. On weekends, his Rolls Royce became an omnibus, bearing parties to and from the city between 9 in the morning and long past midnight, while his station wagon scampered like a brisk yellow bug to meet all trains. And on Mondays, 8 servants, including an extra gardener, toiled all day with mops and scrubbing brushes and hammers and garden shears, repairing the ravages of the night before. Every Friday, 5 crates of oranges and lemons arrived from a fruiterer in New York. Every Monday, these same oranges and lemons left his back door in a pyramid of pulpless halves. There was a machine in the kitchen which could extract the juice of 200 oranges in half an hour if a little button was pressed 200 times by a butler's thumb. At least once a fortnight, a corps of caterers came down with several hundred feet of canvas and enough colored lights to make a Christmas tree of Gatsby's enormous gardens. On buffet tables garnished with glistening hors d'oeuvres, spice-baked hams crowded against salads of harlequin designs and pastry pigs and turkeys bewitched to a dark gold. In the main hall, a bar with a real brass rail was set up and stocked with gins and liquors and with cordials so long forgotten that most of his female guests were too young to know one from another. So this is happening every week. You got to imagine what kind of expense a party like this is going to entail. I mean, he's got this huge buffet of like all kinds of foods. He's having like hundreds of oranges and lemons juice to make different things, and all this liquor, which like this is during Prohibition, so he probably had to get it like under the table. And like all these people are coming in like from 9 in the morning on. He's like sending one car out to bring people from different places and then another car out to meet trains so that people can come in to his parties. So there's most likely hundreds of people at these parties and all like eating his food, drinking his liquor. Like I can't even imagine how much money that would cost. And yes, he's got this huge mansion. It's all lit up, but it's like, how much money must you have to pull off something like this every week? I mean, like once a quarter would be fine, you know, it would still be expensive, but like I can't imagine trying to do something like that every week. It's like trying to throw a really big prom once a week. And I know how much proms cost. Oop. God dang it. I hate the way this PDF is set up. I hate it. I hate it. Sometimes it just comes out of me. By 7 o'clock, the orchestra has arrived. I don't know why it suddenly is present tense, but it is. No thin 5-piece affair, but a whole pit full of oboes and trombones and saxophones and viols and cornets and piccolos and low and high drums. The last swimmers have come in from the beach now and they're dressing upstairs. The cars from New York are parked 5 deep in the drive, and already the halls and salons and verandas are gaudy with primary colors and hair shorn in strange new ways and shawls beyond the dreams of Castile. The bar is in full swing and floating rounds of cocktails permeate the garden outside until the air is alive with chatter and laughter and casual innuendo and introductions forgotten on the spot and enthusiastic meetings between women who never knew each other's names. The lights grow brighter as the earth lurches away from the sun, and now the orchestra is playing yellow cocktail music and the opera of voices pitches a key higher. Laughter is easier, minute by minute, spilled with prodigality, tipped out at a cheerful word. The groups change more swiftly, swell with new arrivals, dissolve and form in the same breath. Already there are wanderers, confident girls who weave here and there among the stouter and more stable brick. Become for a sharp, joyous moment the center of a group, and then excited with triumph, glide on through the sea change of faces and voices and color under the constantly changing light. Suddenly, one of these gypsies in trembling opals seizes a cocktail out of the air, dumps it down for courage, and moving her hands like Frisco, dances out alone on the canvas platform. A momentary hush. The orchestra leader varies his rhythm obligingly for her, and there's a burst of chatter as the erroneous news goes around that she is Gilda Gray's understudy from The Follies. The party has begun. So these parties are really characterized by like lavishness. Everybody's just indulging in food and drink. There's so many people there. Everybody's just like having a great time. There's all this dancing. They've hired like a big orchestra every week. This is a lot. It sounds honestly like such a fun party to go to. And the point of saying that last thing about the understudy from the Follies, I don't really know what the Follies are, but it sounds like celebrities essentially are showing up to this party. That like this is kind of a who's who of people in the New York, Long Island area. Would be a hoot to go to. I believe that on that first night I went to Gatsby's house, I was one of the few guests who had actually been invited. People were not invited, they went there. They got into automobiles which bore them out to Long Island, and somehow they ended up at Gatsby's door. Once there, they were introduced by somebody who knew Gatsby, and after that, they conducted themselves according to the rules of behavior associated with amusement parks. Sometimes they came and went without having met Gatsby at all, came for the party with the simplicity of heart that was its own ticket of admission. I had been actually invited. A chauffeur in a uniform of robin's egg blue crossed my lawn early that Saturday morning with a surprisingly formal note from his employer. The honor would be entirely Gatsby's, it said, if I would attend his little party that night. He had seen me several times and had intended to call on me long before, but a peculiar combination of circumstances had prevented it. Signed, J. Gatsby, in a majestic hand. So I think this is also interesting. People don't get invited to these parties, they just show up. Like if I were throwing a party and people just showed up that I hadn't invited, I'd be upset about it. But it seems like that's kind of the expectation that just like all the cool people in New York are going to flock to this party. Which probably helps explain why in the first chapter when Nick met Jordan Baker, she was like, oh, you must know Gatsby. I went to a party of his a couple weeks ago. So like everybody, it's just like the place to go. Everybody who's anybody goes to the Gatsby parties. Dressed up in white flannels, I went over to his lawn a little after 7 and wandered around rather ill at ease among swirls and eddies of people I didn't know, though here and there was a face I had noticed on the commuting train. I was immediately struck by the number of young Englishmen dotted about, all well-dressed, all looking a little hungry, and all talking in low, earnest voices to solid and prosperous Americans. I was sure that they were selling something, bonds or insurance or automobiles. They were at least agonizingly aware of the easy money in the vicinity and convinced that it was theirs for a few words in the right key. Ooh, God dang it. Sorry. As soon as I arrived, I made an attempt to find my host, but the 2 or 3 people of whom I asked his whereabouts stared at me in such an amazed way and denied so vehemently any knowledge of his movements that I slunk off in the direction of the cocktail table, the only place in the garden where a single man could linger without looking purposeless and alone. I was on my way to get roaring drunk from sheer embarrassment when Jordan Baker came out of the house and stood at the head of the marble steps, leaning a little backward and looking with contemptuous interest down into the garden. I remember Jordan is Daisy's friend who is a professional golfer. And when he met her for the first time, he was like, this woman is so intimidating, but in a way that I'm really attracted to. He said she was like the most terrifying person he'd ever known, but he just wanted to keep looking at her. Welcome or not, I found it necessary to attach myself to someone before I should begin to address cordial remarks to the passers-by. Hello, I roared, advancing toward her. My voice seemed unnaturally loud across the garden. I thought you might be here, she responded absently as I came up. I remembered you live next door to... She held my hand impersonally as a promise that she'd take care of me in a minute and gave ear to 2 girls in twin yellow dresses who stopped at the foot of the steps. Hello, they cried together. Sorry you didn't win. That was for the golf tournament. She had lost in the finals the week before. You don't know who we are, said one of the girls in yellow, but we met you here about a month ago. You've dyed your hair since then, remarked Jordan, and I started, but the girls had moved casually on, and her remark was addressed to the premature moon, produced like the supper, no doubt, out of a caterer's basket. Just meaning like the whole thing seems so picturesque. Like it feels like even the moon has been delivered to make this night perfect. With Jordan's slender golden arm resting in mine, we descended the steps and sauntered about the garden. A tray of cocktails floated at us through the twilight, and we sat down at a table with the 2 girls in yellow and 3 men, each one introduced to us as Mr. Mumble, just meaning like, hey, I'm Mr. I'm he doesn't know their names. Do you come to these parties often? Inquired Jordan of the girl beside her. The last one was the one I met you at, answered the girl in an alert, confident voice. She turned to her companion. Wasn't it for you, Lucille? It was for Lucille, too. I like to come, Lucille said. I never care what I do, so I always have a good time. When I was here last, I tore my gown on a chair, and he asked me my name and address. Inside of a week, I got a package from Croyer. I just have no idea how to pronounce it. Oh my gosh, you're probably right. Croyer. It's got to be French. Croyers. That makes so much more sense. And it sounds fancy. With a new evening gown inside it. Did you keep it? Asked Jordan. Sure, I did. I was going to wear it tonight, but it was too big in the bust and had to be altered. It was gas blue with lavender beads, $265, which would be expensive for a dress even now. In 1920, it's insane, or probably 22. There's something funny about a fellow that'll do a thing like that, said the other girl eagerly. He doesn't want any trouble with anybody. Who doesn't? I inquired. Gatsby. Somebody told me. The 2 girls and Jordan leaned together confidentially. Somebody told me they thought he killed a man once. A thrill passed over all of us. The 3 Mr. Mumbles bent forward and listened eagerly. I don't think it's so much that, argued Lucille skeptically. It's more that he was a German spy during the war. One of the men nodded in confirmation. I heard that from a man who knew all about him, grew up with him in Germany, he assured us positively. Oh no, said the first girl. It couldn't be that because he was in the American Army during the war. As our credulity switched back to her, she leaned forward with enthusiasm. You look at him sometimes when he thinks nobody's looking at him. I'll bet he killed a man. She narrowed her eyes and shivered. Lucille shivered. We all turned and looked around for Gatsby. It was testimony to the romantic speculation he inspired that there were whispers about him from those who found little that it was necessary to whisper about in this world. So like nobody knows the truth about him. He's one of those people that just, despite the fact that people are going to his house every single weekend, no one seems to really know anything about him. There's all this speculation, like he killed somebody, he was a spy in the war, he served in the American war, and there will be other rumors about him, but nobody actually knows, and nobody seems to like know him very personally. They're interested, but it sounds more like they're just interested in the story rather than like, hey, let's go find him and talk to him and like see what he's all about. Clearly money is no issue to him, as evidenced by these parties, and also the fact that like this girl ripped her dress at the party and he sent her a $265 dress to replace it. I don't think that's really necessary, but he's clearly very just like generous and lavish and very, very rich.
And that man, very, very nice. He's giving a chick money for messing up her dress.
Mm-hmm.
I will not be that nice.
I mean, maybe
you're
if you had
supposed to give her a
money
napkin
to burn, maybe you would be.
You're supposed to give her a napkin no matter what the mess is. And then
offer. Dress is like completely destroyed, then you pay out, but
and then like you offer her money and you offer her to take her somewhere else. That's what you're supposed to do. You say, here, let me help you clean this up. You give her the little handkerchief or a napkin. And then you're like, if it's no problem, I would like to go and take you and buy you a new one. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not just supposed to be like, take this.
Yeah. And maybe maybe if I had all the money in the world to burn and just like do whatever I wanted to do with, maybe I would, like if somebody messes up their outfit at my house, like let's pay to replace it. But it's also like, sorry that whatever you snagged your dress on was in your way. Like it's not his fault, but he takes on the responsibility like it is. Alyssa brought up an interesting point. which is that like they're making all this speculation about him, like maybe he killed somebody. They don't seem to care. They're coming to his parties every week and just continuing to like speculate. And they even seem like a little bit more interested in him if he did kill somebody. They're like, look at that guy. He looks like somebody who would have murdered someone before. And like they just
That's just
go
rude.
about their merry way.
So why do you come back to the parties if you think that he's still?
I know, like, aren't you worried that he might kill you?
I'm just like, nah, it's probably a good reason or something.
Yeah, it's probably a good reason. What did you say, LeBron?
That's just rude. As soon as this guy killed the guy, maybe the guy's just rich, or maybe the guy's just really bored. You want to have some fun. I can't blame
Maybe
him.
so. I mean,
LeBron was
that's
the
the
richest
thing.
man
Like
on earth.
nobody's actually asking him to confirm or deny any of it, and most of them don't even seem to know him.
It's like OJ all over again.
It's what all over again?
I said it's like OJ.
Oh, well, to be fair, like, yeah, OJ is like a celebrity in the time, and no one cared that he killed someone because he was a celebrity. And Gatsby's not a celebrity, but like for all intents and purposes, he kind of is. He's like legendary almost. All right, let's continue. The first supper, there would be another one after midnight, was now being served, and Jordan invited me to join her own party, who were spread around a table on the other side of the garden. There were 3 married couples and Jordan's escort, a persistent undergraduate given to violent innuendo and obviously under the impression that sooner or later Jordan was going to yield him up her person to a greater or lesser degree. Instead of rambling, this party had preserved a dignified homogeneity and assumed to itself the function of representing the staid nobility of the countryside. East Egg condescending to West Egg and carefully on guard against its spectroscopic gaiety. Basically meaning, we kind of talked about how there's a difference between East Egg and West Egg, and East Egg is very old money and kind of snobbish, and West Egg is more new money, more like fashionable, or like more like hip and current. But there's like a little bit of sort of rivalry between them, because obviously like old money thinks that they're better than new money, but they're coming to the parties anyway. And Jordan's got this this college boy here with her who's like basically trying to get her into bed.
Wait, so like, Gatsby's in West Egg or East Egg?
Gatsby is in West Egg. Yeah, Nick's little shack is next to his, but he's like, it's very extravagant and everything. I feel like West Egg is like a lot flashier, and East Egg, old money, where Daisy and Tom live, are more like prim and proper, kind of, they were born into it. Yeah, like they don't have anything to prove. Let's get out, whispered Jordan after a somehow wasteful and inappropriate half hour. This is much too polite for me. We got up and she explained that we were going to find the host. I had never met him, she said, and it was making me uneasy. The undergraduate nodded in a cynical, melancholy way. The bar, where we glanced first, was crowded, but Gatsby was not there. She couldn't find him from the top of the steps, and he wasn't on the veranda. On a chance, we tried an important-looking door and walked into a high Gothic library, paneled with carved English oak and probably transported complete from some ruin overseas. A stout, middle-aged man with enormous owl-eyed spectacles was sitting somewhat drunk on the edge of a great table, staring with unsteady concentration at the shelves of books. As we entered, he wheeled excitedly around and examined Jordan from head to foot. "What do you think?" he demanded impetuously. "About what?" He waved his hand toward the bookshelves. "About that. As a matter of fact, you needn't bother to ascertain. I ascertained. They're real." "The books?" He nodded. "Absolutely real. Have pages and everything. I thought they'd be a nice, durable cardboard. Matter of fact, they're absolutely real. Pages and... Here, let me show you." Taking our skepticism for granted, he rushed to the bookcases and returned with volume 1 of the Stoddard lectures. "See," he cried triumphantly, "it's a bona fide piece of printed matter. It fooled me. This fellow's a regular Belasco. It's a triumph. What thoroughness, what realism." Knew when to stop too, didn't cut the pages. "But what do you know? What do you want? What do you expect?" He snatched the book from me and replaced it hastily on its shelf, muttering that if one brick was removed, the whole library was liable to collapse. Who brought you? He demanded. Or did you just come? I was brought. Most people were brought. Jordan looked at him alertly, cheerfully, without answering. I was brought by a woman named Roosevelt, he continued. Mrs. Claude Roosevelt. Do you know her? I met her somewhere last night. I've been drunk for about a week now, and I thought it might sober me up to sit in a library. Has it? A little bit, I think. I can't tell yet. I've only been here an hour. Did I tell you about the books? They're real. You told us. We shook hands with him gravely and went back outdoors. At some point, I will come back to this scene and talk about the books being real, but right now it just sounds like the ramblings of a drunk man. It was dancing now on the canvas in the garden, old men pushing young girls backward in eternal graceless circles, superior couples holding each other tortuously, fashionably, and keeping in the corners, and a great number of single girls dancing individualistically or relieving the orchestra for a moment of the burden of the banjo or the traps. By midnight, the hilarity had increased. A celebrated tenor had sung in Italian, and a notorious contralto had sung in jazz, and between the numbers, people were doing stunts all over the garden, while happy, vacuous bursts of laughter rose toward the summer sky. A pair of stage twins, who turned out to be the girls in yellow, did a baby act in costume, and champagne was served in glasses bigger than finger bowls. The moon had risen higher, and floating in the sound was a triangle of silver scales, trembling a little to the stiff, tinny drip of the banjos on the lawn. I was still with Jordan Baker. We were sitting at a table with a man of about my age and a rowdy little girl who gave way upon the slightest provocation to uncontrollable laughter. I was enjoying myself now. I had taken 2 finger bowls of champagne, and the scene had changed before my eyes into something significant, elemental, and profound. At a lull in the entertainment, the man looked at me and smiled. Your face is familiar, he said politely. Weren't you in the 3rd Division during the war? Why, yes, I was in the 9th Machine Gun Battalion. I was in the 7th Infantry until June 1918. I knew I'd seen you somewhere before. We talked for a moment about some wet, gray little villages in France. Evidently, he lived in this vicinity, for he told me that he had just bought a hydroplane and was going to try it out in the morning. Want to go with me, old sport? Just near the shore along the Sound. What time? Any time that suits you best. It was on the tip of my tongue to ask his name when Jordan looked around and smiled. Having a gay time now? She inquired. Much better. I turned again to my new acquaintance. This is an unusual party for me. I haven't even seen the host. I live over there. I waved my hand at the invisible hedge in the distance. And this man Gatsby sent over his chauffeur with an invitation. For a moment, he looked at me as if he failed to understand. I'm Gatsby, he said suddenly. What? I exclaimed. Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought you knew, old sport. I'm afraid I'm not a very good host. He smiled understandingly, much more than understandingly. It was one of those rare smiles with a quality of eternal reassurance in it that you may come across 4 or 5 times in life. It faced or seemed to face the whole external world for a moment, for an instant, I don't know what it is, and then concentrated on you with an irresistible prejudice in your favor. It understood you just so far as you wanted to be understood, believed in you as you would like to believe in yourself, and assured you that it had precisely the impression of you that, at your best, you hope to convey. Yes, thank you. Let me finish this paragraph. We'll talk about that. Precisely at that point, it vanished, and I was looking at an elegant young roughneck, a year or 2 over 30, whose elaborate formality of speech just missed being absurd. Sometime before he introduced himself, I got a strong impression that he was picking his words with care. Alyssa said, he really likes Gatsby. Yeah, like that's a lot to say about somebody that you have literally just met. And also, I don't think I've ever met someone, I don't think I've ever been with anybody where I thought like, oh, he's just got one of those smiles that understands everything about you and gives you the exact impression you were hoping to convey and makes you feel like there's no one else in the world. I'm like, oh, she has a lovely smile. Yeah, like that's a crazy thing to say.
I don't think like anybody who's like, you could never, I don't know how you could be in love with somebody like that. That's like ridiculous. Like, oh my God, your smile's so beautiful. You just make like,
Yeah.
shut up. Like, there's
It's
just no
insane.
possible way.
And like, to
Disgusting.
be fair, he's writing this like in hindsight. So it's kind of one of those things with like an unreliable narrator that like he's not necessarily wrong or lying or anything, but he's just telling it kind of different to how it actually was, because you never meet someone and right away you think this about them. But maybe if you knew someone for a while and knew like what a lovely person they were, you might be able to like say all that stuff and even think like, oh, I knew he was that great from the moment I met him. And like, it's not exactly true, but it feels true. And I think it probably feels true to Nick that like this smile, this like understanding smile was always showed him what kind of person Gatsby was. But in reality, probably not. Another really interesting thing is that like Gatsby's going to start coming in a lot more, but there's so little physical description of him, which is one reason you can kind of cast anyone to play Gatsby. It doesn't say if he's blonde or brunette or tall or short, or like, it never says anything. It's just like, this is the most physical description you get, and it's not even like believable. So I feel like it almost helps add to like the mystery, this air of like being larger than life, that like we don't even really know exactly what he looks like, just that he's got a killer smile. Almost at the moment when Mr. Gatsby identified himself, a butler hurried toward him with the information that Chicago was calling him on the wire. He excused himself with a small bow that included each of us in turn. If you want anything, just ask for it, old sport, he urged me. Excuse me, I will rejoin you later. When he was gone, I turned immediately to Jordan, constrained to assure her of my surprise. I had expected that Mr. Gatsby would be a florid and corpulent person in his middle years, like some fat old man. If he's able to like do all this and bring together this whole party, I was expecting like some fat old millionaire, not this like cool young man with a beautiful smile. Who is he? I demanded. Do you know? He's just a man named Gatsby. Where's he from, I mean, and what does he do? Now you're started on the subject, she answered with a wan smile. Well, he told me once he was an Oxford man, which is the like Ivy League university in England. A dim background started to take shape behind him, but at her next remark it faded away. However, I don't believe it. Why not? I don't know, she insisted. I just don't think he went there. Something in her tone reminded me of the other girls' I think he killed a man, and had the effect of stimulating my curiosity. I would have accepted without question the information that Gatsby sprang from the swamps of Louisiana or for the lower east side of New York. That was comprehensible. But young men didn't, at least in my provincial experience, I believe they didn't. Hey, provincial. Drift coolly out of nowhere and buy a palace on Long Island Sound. Anyhow, he gives large parties, said Jordan, changing the subject with an urbane distaste for the concrete. And I like large parties. They're so intimate. At small parties, there isn't any privacy. I know. But I kind of get it too, because like if you're at a small party, you're talking to everybody and like everybody sees what, like if you're at a big party, you can kind of like grab one or two people and go off to the side and sort of do your own thing. I get it. There was a boom of a bass drum, and the voice of the orchestra leader rang out suddenly above the echolalia of the garden. Ladies and gentlemen, he cried. Sorry, same voice. Let me do a different voice. Ladies and gentlemen, he cried, at the request of Mr. Gatsby, we are going to play for you Mr. Vladimir Tostov's latest work, which attracted so much attention at Carnegie Hall last May. If you read the papers, you'll know there was a big sensation. He smiled with jovial condescension and added, some sensation, whereupon everybody laughed. The piece is known, he concluded lustily, as Vladimir Tostov's Jazz History of the World. The nature of Mr. Tostov's composition eluded me, because just as it began, my eyes fell on Gatsby, standing alone on the marble steps and looking from one group to another with approving eyes. All right, here's some physical description. His tanned skin was drawn attractively tight on his face, and his short hair looked as though it were trimmed every day. That's it. He's tan and has short hair. I could see nothing sinister about him. I wondered if the fact that he was not drinking helped to set him off from his guests. For it seemed to me that he grew more correct as the fraternal hilarity increased. When the jazz history of the world was over, girls were putting their heads on men's shoulders in a puppyish, convivial way. Girls were swooning back playfully into men's arms, even into groups, knowing that someone would arrest their falls. But no one swooned backward on Gatsby, and no French bob touched Gatsby's shoulder, and no singing quartets were formed with Gatsby's head for one link. So even though this is his party, he's not really participating in anything. Like, he had that conversation with Nick, but everybody else is like having a grand old time and singing and dancing and doing all these other things, and he's just kind of like standing off to the side observing. He's not even drinking.
He's not getting girls.
He's not getting girls. No.
He has so much potential.
He has so much potential. Yeah, I know. There's so many people. We talked about gold diggers in my second period class, and you would think that some gold diggers would make their move on this guy.
He's also mysterious and all that stuff. Like, what?
I know. And Leo DiCaprio played him in the movie. Clearly, he's he's a lovely man. And he seems polite, like inviting Nick out for like to try out his new plane and stuff. It seems like he should be a little bit more interactive. We'll find out why, don't worry. I beg your pardon. Gatsby's butler was suddenly standing beside us. Miss Baker, he inquired, I beg your pardon, but Mr. Gatsby would like to speak to you alone. With me? She exclaimed in surprise. Yes, madam. She got up slowly, raising her eyebrows at me in astonishment, and followed the butler toward the house. I noticed that she wore her evening dress, all her dresses, like sports clothes. There was a jauntiness about her movements, as if she had first learned to walk upon golf courses on clean, crisp mornings. I was alone, and it was almost 2. For some time, confused and intriguing sounds had issued from a long, many-windowed room which overhung the terrace. Eluding Jordan's undergraduate, who was now engaged in an obstetrical conversation with 2 chorus girls and who implored me to join him, I went inside. The room was full of people. The large room was full of people. One of the girls in yellow was playing the piano, and beside her stood a tall, red-haired young lady from a famous chorus engaged in song. She had drunk a quantity of champagne, and during the course of her song, she had decided ineptly that everything was very, very sad. She was not only singing, she was weeping too. If a double-decker bus crashes. That was a good song. Whenever there was a pause in the song, she filled it with gasping, broken sobs, and then took up the lyrics again in a quavering soprano. The tears coursed down her cheeks, not freely, however, for when they came into contact with her heavily beaded eyelashes, they assumed an inky color and pursued the rest of their way in slow black rivulets. A humorous suggestion was made that she sing the notes on her face, whereupon she threw up her hands, sank into a chair, and went off into a deep, vinous sleep. All right, gotta go. See y'all tomorrow.
Bye.